Last year, players like Chris Olave, Javonte Williams, and others broke out big time in fantasy football and helped you win a fantasy championship. So who's going to do it in 2026? I got 5 names I think have a strong chance to break out in 2026 and be league winners. Now let's start with the second-year player. That is Omarion Hampton, running back for the Chargers here. Did not have a great rookie season. Obviously, a big part of that rookie season was derailed by injury, but also he was lagging behind Najee Harris. Remember, Najee Harris had an eye injury, and when he came back and was healthy, was taking snaps and touches away from Omarion Hampton. But Najee Harris was only on a 1-year deal. Very unlikely they're going to bring Najee Harris back. That means it's probably going to be Hampton, Kimani Vidal. Now, I know Kimani Vidal did have some nice games down the stretch there when Hampton was out, but I'm not too concerned about Kimani Vidal here. I think Hampton is the better player. He was a much better prospect. Coming into year 2, I think he's going to be the guy here, and you want whoever the running back is in this Chargers offense, because we're going from a Greg Roman offense to a Mike McDaniel offense. Yeah, give me Mike McDaniel here. This guy has been back, even going back to his days as the offensive coordinator with the 49ers. Of course, his years in Miami where Raheem Mostert was awesome, then Devon Achane was awesome. Like, you want the running back in a Mike McDaniel offense, and it is probably going to be Omarion Hampton this year. So I know rookie year was not great for him. A lot of people, when these rookies don't do anything, they already label them as bust. But man, I think Omarion Hampton is primed for a huge year under this Mike McDaniel offense. And let's not forget, the Chargers last season went into the season without one of the best offensive tackles in the game, Rashawn Slater. Then they lost one of the other best offensive linemen in the game, Joe Alt, for the rest of the season. If both those guys are healthy, rolling into 2026, this offensive line will be much improved. Omarion Hampton with a year under his belt, I really think he's going to have a huge year here in year 2 and is going to be a breakout in 2026. And now let's move on to a bit of a vet wide receiver. That's Devonta Smith. But look, he is entering his age 27 season, which is primarily like the peak, for wide receivers as far as their best years, 27 to 28, maybe 29, in that range. And of course, he's been good. Like, Devonta Smith has been good, and it's probably weird to see Devonta Smith on a breakout video, but if you really think about it, Devonta Smith hasn't had like that really big season yet, but I think this year could be that year. What's been holding him back, of course, is the fact that he's in a low volume passing offense, not a team that throws the ball a lot, and he's playing with another very good wide receiver in A.J. Brown. But both of those issues might be solved going into 2026. First of all, there is, I would say, at least a 50-50 chance we see A.J. Brown not on the Eagles next year, get traded to another team. We know it was not like a great relationship for most of the end of the season last year. Look, maybe it doesn't happen. Sometimes these trades are hard to work out. You never know. But if A.J. Brown is traded, that certainly opens the door for Smith to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. Even if the Eagles, add wide receiver help, after A.J. Brown, probably not going to be a wide receiver on A.J. Brown's level, let's be honest here. But also the offense upgrade with new offensive coordinator Sean Mannion, who's been given Nick Sirianni said, here you go, you got the keys, you run the offense, you do whatever, you call the plays, it's all yours here. Sean Mannion comes from that Sean McVay coaching tree. You want a guy with from that kind of coaching tree. He's just a cheat code for wide receivers. If he runs the offense anything like the Sean McVay offense, which he probably will, an absolute cheat code for wide receivers here. And Devonta Smith is a good wide receiver. Again, it's not like this is a untalented player, who just, couldn't make things work. No, he's a talented wide receiver. He's just been in suboptimal situations, but I think that changes in 2026, especially if A.J. Brown is traded and he could absolutely break out and finally live up to those expectations in 2026. Maybe be this year's Chris Olave, right? Go from a kind of a high-end fringe wide receiver to an every week, no doubt, stud wide receiver. All right, now let's go to a younger wide receiver, a guy I really thought could break out last year, and he didn't, but kind of injuries derailed him. Talking about Ricky Pearsall here of the 49ers. Again, another season last year, dealt with injuries, was consistently banged up. But you look at it in the 5 games, and sadly, yes, there were only 5 games where he played at least 80% of the snaps. He was the wide receiver 22 over that stretch. He was also 17th in air yard share among all wide receivers over those 5 games and 15th in target share. And among wide receivers that ran at least 100 routes last year, he was 3rd in route win rate, 9th in separation score, and 13th in yards per route run. So it wasn't like he was bad. When he was on the field and healthy, he was good. That's just the issue here. He's got to be on the field and healthy. But look, take a guy like Christian Watson last year, who was coming off a major injury, by the way. People were like, this guy's always hurt. He can never stay healthy. What did he do? He came back, he stayed healthy, and he was mostly awesome in fantasy last year. If you stashed him or picked him up off the waiver wire, you were more than happy. So if Ricky Pearsall can put together a fully healthy year, he can be that type of player, the guy that gives you monster spike weeks in this Shanahan offense. Again, I've talked about it. You want this Shanahan McVay tree. You want the top wide receivers in this offense. If Ricky Pearsall is healthy, I think it's going to be him entering that year 3, that prime age where it's like, okay, this is where we see most wide receivers, right, finally make the leap. Like year 1's kind of rocky as a rookie, year 2 gets better, and then year 3 we see that very good year. That could be Ricky Pearsall this year. Yes, he's going to get slapped with that injury prone label, of course, because his first 2 years he's missed so many games. But if he's not injury prone this year and you don't draft him, you might just regret it. Now, real quick before I get to the last 2 names on this list, I want to say if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football and you're not watching our Dynasty channel, you're probably going to regret that too. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go check it out. Dynasty Endgame. Go watch the videos. Go subscribe if you play Dynasty, or even if you don't and you just want to support the channel, go check it out and subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. All right, now sticking with the 49ers, let's talk about a quarterback that is absolutely ready to break out and smash and win fantasy leagues, and that is Brock Purdy. This guy was quietly awesome last year. Yes, he only played 9 games, so kind of went under the radar how good he was, but he was a QB5 in points per game. And in fact, if you look at it, his 3 years in the league so far, he's been the QB6, the QB10, and the QB5 in points per game. So he's been a very, very good fantasy quarterback. Not to mention, he gives you a little bit of sneaky rushing upside here. Last year, he was on pace for over 300 rushing yards, 6 rushing touchdowns. You go back to the year before that, 2024, he went over 300 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns in 15 games. So, no, he's not going to run like a Lamar or Allen, Jalen Hurts or anybody like that, but he gives you enough rushing upside to help you in fantasy. And again, this is fantasy gold for offense. As long as Christian McCaffrey is healthy, Pearsall, Jennings, I know Kittle, he's probably not going to have Kittle next year, but it's all right. He's got Jake Tonjes. He's got his boy, Jake Tonjes. He's fine here. Brock Purdy is absolutely ready to break out in fantasy for an entire season and be a monster top 5 QB from week 1 till the finish. Again, kind of like Ricky Pearsall, he just needs to stay healthy. He's got the coaches, he's got the weapons, he's got the offense. If he stays healthy, plays all 17, he is absolutely going to break out and be a monster in fantasy next year. And then finally, let's dig really, really deep here. And a running back that I think is ready to absolutely break out, and people are sleeping on him right now, and this could change after free agency in the NFL draft. That is Devin Neal of the New Orleans Saints. So let's take a look at the running back room right now. We've got Alvin Kamara, who is still under contract, but there is a lot of rumors that he's going to be a cut candidate, because if they cut him with a post-June 1st designation, they will save $8.5 million in cap space. Who else is there? Kendre Miller. This is a guy who sadly has been injury prone since he came into the league, and he's coming off an ACL tear that he suffered in week 7 last year. So he's probably not going to be ready to start the season. That is going to leave Devin Neal as the guy. Now, I know Devin Neal missed the end of the season with a hamstring injury, but it's a hamstring injury. Not to make light of it, but it's going to be fully recovered by the time next season starts. And you look at it in the 3 games where he was a starter last year, scored 11, 9, and 14 PPR points. Now, those aren't massive numbers, but again, those were his first 3 games as a starter in the NFL. He also had 11 targets and 9 receptions over those 3 games. So even if the Saints do something in free agency or the draft where they draft more of like a early down type of guy here, Devin Neal could still have a role as the pass catching back, again, assuming they do cut Alvin Kamara. But if they do cut Kamara and they don't do anything great in free agency, and not a great free agent class, I mean, there's a couple guys like Brees, Kenneth Walker, but I doubt they're chasing those guys. We'll see. Or they don't do anything in the draft, and look, the draft falls off very quick at the running back position. Devin Neal could absolutely be entering 2026 as the RB1 for the New Orleans Saints, which recently doesn't excite you, but after what we saw last season with Kellen Moore, with this offense, with Tyler Shuck showing that he could potentially be that guy, you've got to be excited about the RB1 in this offense. There's a real chance it is Devin Neal heading into 2026, and if it is, he could absolutely break out. All right, there's 5 players that I'm targeting as breakouts right now heading into 2026. Of course, a lot of this is going to change after free agency, the NFL draft, so make sure you stay tuned. We're going to be breaking it all down for you. And of course, if you haven't checked out the Dynasty video channel yet, go check it out, Dynasty Endgame. Subscribe, watch the videos. We greatly appreciate it.